everybody. Today we're talking about shame and how that stands in the way of self-love and appreciation. This is the You Don't Owe Me podcast, and I'm Juliana J., your host, and let's dive right into it. So I think this is really true. There's all this information out there and encouragement out there for you to love yourself and appreciate yourself and be kind to yourself. But at the same time, how do you do that? How do you get there? What does that mean? What are the ramifications of that? And what do you have to let go to achieve it? Do you have to let go of anything? What dogma do you pick? How do you get there? How do you start? How do you take the first step? I think a lot of times that journey to self-love stops right at the beginning because we really don't know what the first step is. I think that's true with most things that you're trying to work on with either yourself or in the outside world, is just that first step. One, there's a procrastination factor of where I'll get to it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. And then there's also just this first step anxiety of what is the first step? Do I know what the first step is? Am I doing the right thing? We're so conditioned in society that taking risks are trying something new or different or going with, your gut, your intuition is not really the first thing we're supposed to be doing. We're so conditioned to be afraid of doing the wrong thing, but everything is a journey which involves doing the right things, doing the wrong things, going down one path and having to turn around, going down a new path. It's really the beauty of life lies in these things that we do that are taking a bit of a risk, stepping out, maybe having going down the wrong path and having to make a U-turn. It's all a learning experience, and that's why we're here, right? So one of, I think, the big blocks for people in their self-love journey is the feeling of shame. It might be that you're, worried other people, like say your parents, for example, or siblings or people that are close to you, might feel like they might not accept you. Or if they knew these true things about you, they would not accept you or would not be open to that type of like conversation, or even like they're not going to be open. No, I resist this person you're telling me. I want you to go back to what you were before. That's what I accept, and I don't necessarily accept what you're telling me now. And I think thinking about this self-dialogue creates shame. Like for example, what I mean by self-dialogue is you might think to yourself, well, I'm really, really just don't believe in this particular dogma that my family has believed in for a very long time. And if I was authentic about that, people would be upset. I can't tell this person and that person about it because they will be upset. And therefore, I feel shame because the rest of this group would not think that's appropriate for me to believe, something of that nature. It can be really big. It can be really small. It can be something like, I really don't want to have kids, or I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. Or it can be something big like coming out of the closet, or, just embracing your true self, whatever that is, which that version of yourself might not lie in the top 40 viewpoint of what a human being is supposed to be, or what particular religious beliefs might expect from a human being. You're kind of falling out. And I'm not talking about doing anything that's horrendous, bad for people, evil things. I'm not talking about any of that. What I am talking about is just who you are as a human being personally, and the shame that comes with that. There's a lot of shame associated with not climbing the corporate ladder fast enough, not getting a job right out of college, not getting the right job, having to get a job outside of your profession, losing a job, not making enough money, not being the best parent, not being the best son or daughter, not being the best sibling, not being the best friend, not being communicative enough, not being there enough, not being present enough. The list goes on and on and on. And you know, even small things, like for me, just, I like to do these sort of creative things. And it's really hard to tell people that I do that which is so weird, because I do also have shame about it, well, it's weird that I, make these gigantic installations, light fixtures or whatever, no one else does that. It's kind of weird. I don't necessarily want people to know I do that. I don't want to put that out there, because if I put that out there, people will immediately judge it. Well, you should have done this instead of that. And why did you use that? And I don't like that color. And, all these things, which in my mind, when I'm thinking about what people may say negatively about what I do, is actually creates some sort of shame at various levels. It's not either I have all this shame or I have no shame at all. There's all this gray in between. And that's where this sort of shame placement, where you put it, depending on who you are or what you are, it can be something minor, something big, like I say. And I think that stops us from self-love and self-compassion. We don't have compassion for ourselves if we feel like we're not measuring up. We perceive it as something we're doing wrong, or that we are somehow incapable of being something worthy of compassion. And if we can't find that for ourselves, we create an expectation of others not to find it with us as well. We create a situation where we already feel shame about who we are, what we're doing, and who our core essence is. So we don't share it with anybody, but we put out a vibe that we're not worthy of compassion. We're not worthy of this caring. And if we're not worthy of that, perhaps we don't give it to others because we are not getting it ourselves. Perhaps we are upset that we are not getting it ourselves, and maybe feel a little bit like, well, if I'm not getting it, why should I give it? But can you really give it when you're feeling so much shame? I think there is some place where you can do that, but it's at such a blow to yourself. If you have shame about who you are, but you're giving out all this compassion left and right because, really you can resonate with people who are going through things because you're silently inside of your being going through the same things, but you aren't making it public, so that does create a lot of compassion. You see a lot, you just have a lot of compassion for everybody going through something. So you're always giving, but you aren't putting yourself out there so others can give it back. But you also aren't allowing yourself to have any of that, even within your own head and the dialogue that happens there. So I kind of think when you start this self journey, the first thing is really just figuring out, am I ashamed of anything? What are those things? And you don't have to share them with everybody. I feel like for me, they're right on the surface. I can just yes. I know what I feel ashamed of, or feel like I don't measure up, or didn't accomplish things people were expecting of me. And I'm not doing what people are expecting of me. I'm not looking like people are expecting. I'm not doing all these things that people are expecting. It's that it's really like we're so rooted in what other people will think. We're always trying not to. We're always saying, well, I don't care what other people think. But really, I think that's just a human belief system that we do on some level care about what other people think because we are a community oriented species. We're not loners per se. Even an introvert likes to have friends and people around, So it's in our nature to try and fit into a tribe or a group of people or whatever it is. And that shame really prevents us from stepping all the way in. There's a whole host of other things that keep us from stepping all the way in, but let's just address shame here. So, one of the things I think that we can do to work through that for ourselves, and this is kind of a little bit of a painful process because you have to be real with yourself. But I think in really starting that dialogue of being real with yourself, you have the opportunity there to really make the changes that you want in life for yourself. So starting a list, what are the things I feel that people wouldn't accept? What are some things about me that I think are a little out of the out of the lanes, a little different, that some people might have a challenge with? Um, and then do I harbor any shame about that? Not within myself. I can literally, there's things within who I am as a human being that I feel that I am not shameful. I don't feel shame, like I'm not disgusted in myself for these things. But when I think about it in the context of what would so-and-so or the general public think, or, that's where the shame is, in some of these things. Some of it is your internal, like, I don't like that I have that about myself. And we can work on in future episodes what you would do with that. These are things about yourself that, it's the whole list. What are you feel personal shame about, maybe, if you do, and why? Why do I feel the shame? Do I feel it because, the dogma I grew up in condemns it or doesn't like it or thinks it's, a bad thing or whatnot? And I'm not dissing any kind of religion or anything like that. I'm just saying that when you are trying to live your life with a certain dogma and there's parts of your life that don't fall into that, that can bring shame. And then, what things do you feel like I don't feel like this is a bad thing about me at all, but I feel like the outside world would not accept me if they knew, you know. So I'll give you one thing about me that has always garnered a lot of that for the outside world. So, I'm not completely only attracted to the opposite sex. It could be really anyone. I just see there's some people that are really just so attractive that don't fall into cis male category. But I wouldn't say it's another specific category. It would just be anyone with that I feel like, wow, their soul is so beautiful, or their personality is so beautiful. And very few people know that about me. I would say maybe one or two, because the shame of that, what would people think? What would people think if they knew I'm not, heterosexual? I'm not a cis heterosexual. I'm not, playing by that rule. I don't even really identify with being female all the time, what would people think of that? I never thought of it as shame within myself. I just thought, well, I love everyone, but I always went down the path of being what was expected of me. Like I I can't get any serious relationships with anybody unless they're a man, like a cis man. I can't. I have to project to the world this certain thing, and I'm in a generation where that was definitely not, people were not as open-minded about things like that. There wasn't even a lot of terminology that filtered out to the general world about what that would be, and that there would be others out there that felt the same. It was a very taboo subject. And when I was a kid, you didn't, and where maybe even where I grew up in a very small town, you didn't talk about that. In fact, people made fun of that. If you were any if you were queer in any way, you were shunned and made fun of. So you did your best to just conform, right? And I just carried that on throughout my life because I don't want to bring shame on my family. My family will think I'm lesser because of that, etc. So I kept it to myself. I didn't really identify that as something I need to tell everyone. However, there was this shame associated with it that stopped me from just having compassion and love for myself in other ways that I didn't even realize, like I'm not worthy of a good job. I'm not worthy of a good relationship. I'm not worthy of people treating me nicely. I'm not worthy of people caring about this. It just bled into everything about me because I was really feeling shame about it. And that stopped me. That was just this barrier. Well, people will not accept you and you'll be a freak, because again, it was different times. People didn't even have terminology. Like they didn't even have a pronoun that acknowledged, someone who might not identify as either him or she, So there wasn't that, and there wasn't terminology, right? So how do you say what you are? How do you express that? And certainly people would be, ooh, you weird freak, in certain circles. So I had a lot of shame. And that stopped me from really embracing who I was, loving myself, and having compassion for myself. It ended up manifesting in all these other ways, like getting really burned out, because I was trying really hard to just be what everybody wanted all the time, and it led to getting really burned out. It led to depression. It led to a whole host of things. People would ask me stuff that I would have to pick, like, oh yeah, I'm in your group. I'm like, this, I like only guys. I do only this, I am only this. And it just, continued to harbor shame, a little bit more shame every time I did that. But I didn't really realize it until I started analyzing it. And so, that might be true for you, and there might be some barriers there with the shame that is making it challenging for you to really live into yourself, have self-love, self-compassion. I think the other thing you do is you hide that. You hide it. So it's so close to your heart, right? The shame, like you put it right there next to your heart, where your heart is, your space for all loving, all, no judgment, just beauty, just this pure, beautiful love and bliss, right? Is where you kind of feel all of that lies. And when, and then you put your shame right next to it, because that's also your hiding space. You just hide these feelings of pain every time it comes up. And it could be other things too, like say you do something really embarrassing somewhere at a company party or something like that, and you feel just so embarrassed about that, Embarrassment. Oh, embarrassment can often equal shame. Let's put it right there by our hearts. Let's put it right there where our true beauty lies. Oh, this was embarrassing in second grade. Let's put it right there, and then let's keep it there. And at 3 a.m., 30 years later, let's bring that back up in your mind so you can relive the shame. We're constantly doing that to ourselves. I think there's probably a lot of you out there who wake up in the middle of the night and just hash out all the embarrassing things that happened to you, throughout your life, to reaffirm the shame, which you then put right next to your loving bliss, and it gets so like, then it becomes this encasement, right? In this sense, and inside is your love and bliss, but you have this, it's encased in all these embarrassing, shameful things about yourself. And that makes it impossible for you to really love yourself and have compassion for yourself, because perhaps you're even self-punishing. I mean, yes, was guilty of that. I'm trying really hard to get out of that, but it is like the self-punishment of, now let's think about every other time you let yourself down and, feel horrible about it. Let's build a little bit on what you did in fifth grade. Let's build that up to a little bit more shame, because I don't think you have enough. This self-punishing, that's how I would self-punish myself, and into thinking like, well, this embarrassing happened at this coffee house, so I can never go back to that location again, and things like that, just a self-punishment all the time. And it stops you from having compassion for yourself. Instead, you're into the punishing yourself rather than, any nourishing self-talk, like, you're doing the best you could in the moment. You can always go back and do this if you feel like you need to rectify it, but it happens to everyone else and blah, blah, blah. Instead of doing that positive talk to yourself and having some compassion for yourself, you punish yourself, because that's what oddly enough, that's where your comfort zone is. Even though it's painful and you don't like it, you've created this comfort zone where it's comfortable to be in that pain and anguish. And you need to change that comfort zone into a place of nourishment and compassion. And that's where you'll find the self-love. And that will be so opening in your other relationships. So that's what I would do. I would start with just making a list of what those things are. And it might take a while. You might be kind of working on this list, maybe even for a month, writing little things down, whatever, and then deciding, looking at it as is this my shame, or is it shame that I expect from others? Should I be my authentic self? And maybe even identifying, who are those others? Are there others out there where I could be my authentic self and that would be acceptable? Should I go look for those people? Should I not? What should I, what do I think I should do? But start with acknowledging, even after you complete the list, even if the list isn't completed, you just jot down one or two things that point out to you, oh my God, I do have shame. I do have shame. I'm ashamed of these things about myself. What can I do inside myself not to have shame anymore? Maybe it's, every time I think about how shameful this thing is about myself, I'm going to recognize it in my brain and say, I don't do that to myself anymore. I'm not ashamed of this situation about myself. And I am going to find some place, even if it's in the mirror to myself, which I think is a really great exercise every day, of just saying to yourself, looking at yourself in the eyes and saying, I accept this about you. I love this about you. I support you. I care about you. And I want your best life. I love you. Just saying those things to yourself in the mirror as you're thinking about whatever it is that, you feel shame. And just start with that and see what happens. And so, that I think really helped me, that exercise. Just really looking in the mirror. I know it's weird. So many of us avoid even looking in the mirror at all. It's very hard, but it's part of your process. Look at yourself and know that you're beautiful, and know that you support yourself, and you have compassion for yourself, and you love yourself. Day after day, it will change those patterns in your brain that are always going to shame. It'll change them away to a place of compassion and love, So just start there and see how it goes. I'd love to hear your journey as you do it. You can always DM me on Instagram or any of that. All the links are below if you want to talk to me personally, or you can leave a comment or what have you. But I'd really love to know that I support you. I love you. I care about you. You're okay how you are. You're beautiful. So don't forget that. And let me know how it goes. So take care, everyone. I love you. Hi, everybody. I'm just interrupting myself to say a little something about the shame I was talking about earlier regarding being queer. When I was talking about that, I was talking about my own personal shame that I have due to my perception of what I think other people think. I do not think being queer is shameful at all. I don't think there's any place in the world for that kind of collective thought. So I just wanted to put some clarity in there for that, because I think it's really important thing to say, that it's not something people should feel shame about anymore. That's not a positive collective thought when we are supposed to be loving each other. That said, I also wanted to say there are a lot of other examples of things you can do to deal with shame and self-hatred in the following episode, the second part of this series. So if you're feeling like none of the tips you got in this one would really work for you, there's really some great tips in the next video, which I hope you watch, which is about self-hatred. So anyway, I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe and hit the bell. And I'll see you soon. Take care. Love you.